Scaphism. If you think of slow deaths, nothing quite compares to scaphism, sometimes called the boats. It came from ancient Persia, and it was designed to be as drawn out and degrading as possible. The victim was stripped naked and placed between two wooden boats or hollowed-out logs, stacked one on top of the other. Their head, arms, and legs stuck out while their torso was trapped inside. To keep them alive, executioners force-fed the victim milk and honey until they were bloated and sick, often suffering from diarrhea inside the boat. Then came the insects. More honey was smeared on their face and exposed skin, and the boats were set adrift in swamps or tied near stagnant water. Over days, flies, maggots, and worms swarmed over the body. Insects crawled into wounds, ears, and even the mouth. The victim's own waste piled up inside the boats, attracting even more vermin. Ancient writers like Plutarch described this punishment in detail, claiming victims could live for more than a week, slowly eaten alive while rotting from the inside out. Some stories even mention it being used on traitors or captured generals, making it both a punishment and a warning to enemies of the empire. Whether every detail is true or not, Scaphism shows that for some rulers, execution wasn't just about ending a life. It was about destroying a person in the most revolting way imaginable. The Brazen Bull. The Greeks weren't strangers to creative executions either. The Brazen Bull was designed in Sicily by a craftsman named Perillos, who wanted to impress the tyrant Phalaris. His invention was a hollow bronze bull, large enough for a man to fit inside. A door on the side allowed the condemned to be locked in. Once the person was inside, a fire was lit under the belly of the bull. The bronze grew hotter and hotter until it roasted the victim alive. But this wasn't just a cruel oven. It was also a twisted piece of theater. The bull had pipes and tubes built into its head, so that the victim's screams echoed out like the bellowing of a real animal. Crowds didn't just see the execution, they heard the bull roar in agony. Legend says Phalaris turned the invention on Perillos himself, making the creator the first victim of his own machine. Whether true or not, the brazen bull became infamous, passed from ruler to ruler as a tool of fear. It was a public showpiece, a mix of art, cruelty, and spectacle, reminding everyone that power wasn't just enforced with armies, but also with terror. The breaking wheel. In medieval Europe, few things were more feared than the breaking wheel, also called the Catherine wheel. This wasn't just an execution, it was a public display of total destruction. The condemned was tied to a massive wooden wheel, arms and legs stretched out along the spokes. The executioner then used a heavy iron bar to smash their bones, one limb at a time. Sometimes the blows were measured, spaced out to prolong suffering, so that the victim stayed alive through the breaking of both arms and both legs. In some cases, the mangled body was woven through the spokes, and the wheel was raised on a pole for all to see like a gruesome scarecrow. Death could come from shock, dehydration, or exposure, sometimes taking days. There are records of victims surviving so long that townsfolk threw food to them out of pity. One famous case in Germany described a robber who endured on the wheel for more than 36 hours, refusing to die despite his shattered body. It shows how terrifyingly slow this punishment could be. The breaking wheel wasn't just about pain, it was about sending a message. To see someone twisted and broken, spinning above the town, was to be reminded of the power of the law and the church. Coffin torture. If the breaking wheel was designed to shock, coffin torture was meant to humiliate as well as kill. In the Middle Ages, criminals were sometimes locked in iron cages shaped roughly like the human body. These cages were hung from trees, gallows, or city walls. Some were built tightly, forcing the victim into an uncomfortable, immobile position. Others were oversized and exaggerated, mocking the body shape of the condemned. In either case, the victim was left exposed to the sun, wind, rain, and scavenging animals. Birds pecked at their skin. Insects swarmed. Crowds jeered and mocked as the days dragged on. Death came from thirst, starvation, or sheer exposure. But the real power of coffin torture was the public shame. Every passerby saw the body hanging helpless. Day after day, a living warning until finally it became a corpse on display. In some towns, these cages weren't even taken down after death. Skeletons remained inside for weeks long after the victim's suffering was over. Poena culae. The Romans believed certain crimes deserved punishments that were as unique as the crimes themselves. For someone who killed their own parents, the sentence was poena culae, the penalty of the sack. The condemned was sewn into a leather sack along with a collection of live animals: a dog, a monkey, a rooster, and a snake. Once sealed inside, the sack was thrown into a river. The animals panicked, clawed, and bit, turning the inside of the sack into chaos. Even if the person drowned quickly, the horror of being trapped in darkness with terrified animals made it a nightmare. And if they survived long enough, the scratches and bites only made death more gruesome. Roman writers described it as the most shameful death possible. Not only was the parasite destroyed, but they were denied a proper burial, their body lost to the waters. The symbolism was clear. Someone who destroyed their own family deserved to leave the world in disgrace, surrounded by chaos, catapulted to death. Not every weird execution was slow. Some were quick, but dramatic. In medieval Europe, there are records of criminals being tied to giant catapults or trebuchets and launched to their deaths. Sometimes they were flung into spiked pits, stone walls, or enemy territory as a message. Other times they were simply hurled into the distance, their bodies smashing on the ground. This wasn't a common practice, but when it happened, it was more about spectacle than efficiency. Imagine a public crowd gathered not to see a hanging or a burning, but to watch a human body fly through the air like a projectile. It was both ridiculous and horrifying, the ultimate way to show that someone had been literally cast out of society. In some stories, it was even used during sieges where prisoners were launched over castle walls as psychological warfare. Seeing the broken body of a comrade land inside your fortress was a brutal reminder of what would happen if you surrendered. The rat torture. Rats are feared for their teeth, their claws, and their hunger. That fear was turned into torture during the Middle Ages and the Dutch Revolt. The condemned was tied down and a cage holding a rat was strapped to their stomach or chest. Then the cage was heated with fire. With no way out, the rat's only escape was to dig. It clawed and bit its way into the victim's body, trying to burrow deeper away from the heat. The physical pain was unbearable, but the psychological terror may have been worse. Victims knew exactly what was happening to them. The sound of scratching claws and the feeling of teeth tearing through flesh made this one of the most nightmarish forms of execution. This method later appeared in different parts of Europe and even in rumors from South America, proving that sometimes the simplest idea, turning an animal's survival instinct into a weapon, was enough to create a lasting legend of horror. Immurement. Some executions didn't need fire, steel, or animals. Immurement was the simplest, but also one of the most chilling. It meant being walled up alive. Across Europe and Asia, it was used for nuns who broke vows, traitors, or women accused of adultery. The condemned was placed in a small room, pit, or hollow inside a wall. Builders then sealed the entrance with bricks or stones. Sometimes they were given food and water to prolong life. Other times, nothing. The victim died slowly in silence and darkness, starved, suffocated, or simply waiting for death. What made immurement so terrifying was its silence. Unlike a burning or a beheading, it left no spectacle for a crowd to cheer at. Instead, it left behind whispers and legends. Some castles and monasteries were said to have cries and scratching noises coming from the walls, believed to be the restless spirits of those bricked up alive. To be immured wasn't just punishment, it was being turned into part of the building itself, a ghost trapped forever inside stone, unseen but never forgotten.